Hey guys, hoping all is well, and in this video we're going to be continuing our read-along of the Secret Zoo Riddles in Danger, and kind of going from the past video to this one, things have gotten a little bit more intense. So in the last video we had kind of three different scenarios going on, where first it was Megan and Sam were together, and Sam kind of showed his descender-like abilities by kind of turning into almost like a hawk or flying-like creature. We saw kind of the silvery feathers, and he wanted Megan to kind of climb on because time is of the essence at this point. And then Ella and Richie were riding on the bike to get to the secret zoo, and Ella was trying to make record time, and after they got to creepy critters, they slammed into the legs of a Sasquatch. But at this point right now, Ella is on the ground in like a dazed state, and she hit her head really hard. And then Richie's on the ground with a really bad hurt knee. And then in the other picture, we also have Podgy and Noah, who were flying across the outskirts of the neighborhood and into the secret zoo, hoping that nobody was watching them. But Noah was kind of having like this very kind of daydreamish like state where he was, thinking about how like what the people would wonder outside of what they saw, but he wouldn't trade it for the world right now in the world that he was living. So we're going to continue on with chapter 30, and as always, please feel free to follow along. Chapter 30, Flight or Fight. Toward the middle of the zoo, Sam and Megan came upon a group of particularly tall trees. The descender swerved upward, his body as vertical as the trunks, then sailed across the treetops, his wings stirring the branches. Once past the woods, he coasted downward, leveling out around 20 feet from the ground. In front of them were Podgy and Noah. In silhouette, they looked like black and white animation brought to life from a children's comic. Podgy stroking his flipper wings, Noah clinging to his back, the ear flaps of his cap fluttering. As the duos neared each other, they veered in the same direction to fly side by side. Sprawled across a penguin that had only recently learned to fly, Noah looked surprisingly relaxed. He flashed a smile, which Megan bounced back. Megan said, "Is this nuts or what?" "It's like a dream." "It's got to be a dream, right? Any second now, Ma's going to wake me up for breakfast." "If she does, tell her I want pancakes." They laughed. For a moment, there was no flying penguin, no winged teenager, and no danger. All that existed was a special fondness that siblings shared, something that was normally kept buried in the day-to-day frustrations of living together. The four of them swerved around trees and buildings. With each stroke of Sam's wings, a gust of wind lifted the earflaps of Noah's hat. As they crossed Arctic Town, Noah pointed to the polar pool and shouted for everyone to look. There was Blizzard, striding up the staircase to the underwater tunnel. He'd gotten out of his exhibit, undoubtedly using the same secret passage that he'd used to deliver Megan's note to the scouts not so long ago. From the air, Blizzard somehow looked more enormous than ever. When he reached the top of the stairs, he craned his long neck all around, likely trying to spot the Sasquatch. Megan cupped a hand to her mouth and hollered, "Blizzard! Up here!" The bear raised his thick snout. Even in the darkness, Megan could make out the black dot of his nose. Blizzard tripped back his head and roared, his voice muted by the wind in his ears. "Follow us!" called Noah. Blizzard padded up onto the sidewalk and chased after them. His massive body rocked with such force that Megan almost expected the concrete to shatter under his feet. The four continued to fly over the zoo, scanning the grounds. Animals had left their exhibits to stand guard. Megan saw lions hiding in the bushes, monkeys staring out from trash cans, and meerkats peeking out from waterspouts. As they soared over creepy critters, Megan spotted something that made her gasp. She pointed at the ground, where Ella and Richie were lying on the sidewalk. Barely moving, they were clearly hurt. Beside them, a Sasquatch lay tangled in a twisted frame of a bicycle. "Podgy, go!" commanded Noah. Podgy dove. Sam plunged after him, his wings pressed against his sides. Below them, the Sasquatch staggered to its feet, snapping the frame of the bicycle like a twig. It tossed the twisted pieces of metal aside and hobbled over to Ella. As the beast neared the fallen scout, it lifted an arm, spread its claws, and prepared to deliver a blow that would surely end her life. Chapter 31. Lights Out. Ella rolled over on her stomach. Her ears rang. Points of light flashed in her vision. She rose to her knees and tried to focus on the Sasquatch. Its fangs curled over its lips. Moonlight gleamed on its claws. She knew that at any second those claws would come down on her. She thought that closing her eyes would make it easier to die. But before she could block out the sight of the Sasquatch, something else did. The lights in the Clarksville Zoo suddenly blinked out. In groups of 5 or 6, they went black. The lights in lampposts, on buildings, inside exhibits, and within seconds, darkness had engulfed the landscape. Chapter 32. More surprises. With the zoo lights out, Noah used the moonlight to pinpoint the Sasquatch. As the penguin went into his final dive, Noah kicked out his leg, connecting his foot squarely against the monster's forehead. Several things happened at once. The Sasquatch roared in pain and fell backward. Podgy crashed to the ground, and Noah was thrown onto the snowy grass, where he slid and rolled until finally coming to a stop. Noah stood and peered through the darkness. He made out a Sasquatch lying on its back, writhing in pain, and the faint silhouettes of Megan and Sam, who had touched down on the sidewalk about 50 feet behind the fallen monster. Sam stepped away from Megan and ran at the Sasquatch, his wings snapping open like sheets in a stiff wind. He lunged forward and flew parallel to the sidewalk, no higher than 3 feet up. When he reached the Sasquatch, he swept his legs beneath him, and talons, or something that looked like talons, sprang from his shoes. He snagged the beast by its leg and veered into the air, dragging along its captive, who writhed and kicked, trying to get free. The descender carried the Sasquatch higher and higher. Noah followed their dark silhouette against the lighter backdrop of the sky. At around 60 feet, Sam opened his talons and his prisoner fell, its limbs flailing and kicking and grasping at the emptiness around it. It dropped behind a clump of trees and slammed soundlessly into the earth. Sam turned back into a graceful sweep, his wings seeming to brush the star-spotted canvas of sky. As Noah watched, words that once he had read from the pages of the dictionary filled his head. To pounce upon, to attack with violence and suddenness, to descend. Noah rushed over to Ella and Richie. Both scouts were standing, but with difficulty. He grabbed Ella's shoulders and studied her face. "How bad are you hurt?" Ella was too dazed to speak. With trembling hands, she straightened her earmuffs, fluffed her ponytail, and wiped her nose, smearing blood across her cheek. Megan appeared and hugged Ella, almost knocking her off of her feet. Noah held them steady and looked at Richie. "Richie, you okay?" Everything about Richie was crooked. His hat, his glasses, his jacket, his stance. Even his pants had shifted sideways. Noah went to his friend and tried to fix him. A tug here, a pull there. "Richie?" he said again, rubbing his eyes. Richie glanced at Noah. Yeah?" said Noah. "What is it?" "I got a joke." "You can't be serious." Richie nodded, sending tremors through the pom-pom on his cap. In a shaky voice he said, What's the difference between a Sasquatch and a brick wall?" "I have no idea." "At full speed on Ella's bike?" "Nothing." Noah straightened Richie's glasses and nodded. "Not too horrible, given the circumstances." Sam touched down nearby and folded his massive wings against his back, and he shuddered to a stop. The tips of the wings trailed behind him like a cape. Among the shadows, he looked eerie. "The talons," Noah said. "How?" Sam picked up one foot and thrust it forward, launching steel hooks from the sole of his boot, 3 from his toes and 1 from his heel. They were smeared with blood. When he tucked his foot back, the hooks retracted. Sam asked, "Everyone okay?" They nodded. Marlowe touched down on Noah's shoulder, startling him. "Marlowe," said Noah, "we need help. Find Blizzard and Little Bighorn and bring them here." With a chirp, Marlowe sprang into the air. Podgy waddled close, moving his gaze over the other crossers. To Noah, Sam said, "There are more Sasquatches and creepy critters. Charlie spotted them." Everyone stared at the exhibit, perhaps 40 yards away. It was perfectly dark, inside and out. Noah said, "What do we—" Sam held up his hand, silencing Noah. The descender had his stare locked on the main entrance to Creepy Critters, a pair of glass doors standing on a wide concrete porch. "I hear something," he said at last. The scouts inched forward and listened. They kept silent. Around them, the wind moaned. They watched. A dusting of snow swirled over the eaves of the building. Noah heard a muffled thud, then another. "Is that—" Before he could finish, the main entrance to Creepy Critters burst outward. The glass doors shattered and snapped off their final metal frames, their twisted remains hanging limply. Sasquatches jumped onto the wide porch, kicking over empty flower pots. One Sasquatch ripped out a staircase railing and hurled it into a nearby tree. Another smashed its fist through a window, sending shards of glass flying. The crowd of Sasquatches quickly turned around and disappeared back into the dark building. "What are they doing?" Noah asked. Sam stared into the empty spot where the Sasquatches had been. No one expected this. Expected what? After what seemed like a long silence, Sam muttered, "They're clearing a path." "For who?" "The animals inside Creepy Critters. The Sasquatches are releasing them." Noah's heart dropped. Beside him, Richie gasped. Into his headset, Sam said, "Charlie, I need available all units to report to Creepy Critters. Repeat, we need help." The scouts looked at Sam for direction. When it became obvious that he'd suddenly been stunned into silence, it was Noah who took control. "Come on," Noah said. "We gotta go." Then he charged toward the exhibit, toward the black unknown and the monster's dwelling inside of it. And I'll stop the video there, entering chapter 32. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As I was kind of mentioning, things are kind of getting intense as now we have a return of the Sasquatches. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please, as always, take good care of yourselves, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you next time where we continue our read-along of the Secret Zoo, Riddles and Danger. Be safe, everybody.